Shooter, big deer. I can't believe that just happened. The dead deer. He dropped right where we had him. Yes! Oh my gosh. Holy crap. The great Hambino right here. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Fall Podcast. Today we are in episode number 5 of One Giant Mistake. And this is actually the first episode that David and I are remotely doing this. So it's a new venture. And, we got the Zoom going here, which is still, I'm a video guy at heart, but this is still fish out of water for me.
Oh, yeah. So it's a totally different experience, that's for sure.
Yeah. And it's I don't know, man. I say it every week. I just cannot get over the overwhelming amount of feedback we're getting on this series. And it's nothing you and I are doing because we're mediocre hosts at best. So it's just all, the guest and the stories. And I can't thank the guest so far enough, and I can't thank the people listening to this. Thank you. Seriously, thank you. It is greatly appreciated. And David and I are not ones to need a ball tickle, but it is nice to hear every once in a while. I will say that.
No, for sure. And when guys reach out, and they message you, and this, even if it's one sentence of feedback, it's great to hear that they love it. And what I'm picking up from a lot of people is they just feel it's relatable because these are normal guys on these episodes. They're not real big name people, so they feel for them. You know what I mean? Where it's like, damn, that's almost that could be me on the other end.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I do want to tell people, don't stop sending the DMs, but if you could do a copy and paste and put your DM in where you would do a written review in Apple Podcasts, that'd be huge too, because a couple guys on there love the shipwreck. If you go on the reviews, it's like the Dan podcast was awesome with shipwreck. Take that DM that you're doing and just go in there and just throw a little review in there. Love the series and stuff like that. And we got a couple guys saying that they want this series to be all year round, and I would love that. But boy, it's hard to seek out these stories and be.
Yeah.
And it's not just here the deer is. I never knew him. We want some history. We've said it before. We want a story with the deer. And just so you guys know, we got a couple more of these to do, but David and I already have in the works for another series, whether we plan on running it this year or if we're going to run it again next year at this time. We're going to be doing something next year at this time, but we want to spice it up a little bit, keep things going. We're not going to say anything because there's poachers out there. I'm just going to put it that way. There's poachers out there, and if you're listening to this, I see you. We both see you. Okay. Yep. So I'm just gonna leave that there.
Yeah.
So we're working on things. We got a couple more series to go and a lot of podcasts, but we're gonna for sure get back into the just the podcast every day. We're gonna hear stories, but you are scouting like crazy just about every day right now. We could do 3 more season 23 episodes. It's just the amount that you scout is just probably not feasible to do a podcast every day.
Yeah. As far as the scouting, that's just the unseen, what people don't see, and but a lot of times I always like to tell my buddies, it's that I'm killing my buck next fall right now, kind of thing. But when Arron talks about what we have in the works, just if you like what we have going on now, you can bet your ass you're gonna like what we got going forward. The wheels are turning, and we're not gonna stop working.
For sure. And I want to tell everybody out there, please don't stop working for us. Keep spreading the good word. And I want, we have lofty goals for 23. I'm not going to just say what they are, but at the end of this year, we have a benchmark, and I want to hit that benchmark. And if we do, it'll be huge, and it'll all be because of you guys and everybody listening. So just want to lay that out here. So today, let's get in a little bit about today's podcast. It's with Matt Williams. Super nice dude. Did not know this guy from Adam, like a lot of our guests. Did not know this guy at all. He actually reached out to me like a week ago from when we recorded this. I know this is going to run in a couple weeks. So it was like, hey, I got a story. And so I run him through the gauntlet, like, hey, what do you got for info and everything? And this dude, he's on his game. This guy, he does his homework. He's a diehard. He's a younger guy. I think he said he was 27. He knows his stuff, and he lives for chasing after mature deer. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, talking to him, he just sounds a lot like us, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing that I picked up is he's a lot younger than we are. So where he's at with his game at his age, the dude's gonna have a lot of deer to tell stories about someday. Yeah.
And the deer we're talking about today could be probably the biggest. Not the biggest, but one of the biggest typical deer that I've seen in a long time. I'm just gonna leave it there. It's a huge deer. So
So when guys are reaching out, they reach out to the Fall Podcast page, and Aaron's running that, and so Aaron and I collaborate about the stories, and then I see pictures and stuff, and this this is what episode 5 for One Giant Mistake. So I've seen all kinds of the deer so far. In this one, this is not the largest deer of the series, but when I see deer, it's like an eye test for me, right? When I first seen this picture, I was like, dude, I freaking love this buck. Like, he's not this huge, just giant framed animal, or he's not extremely trashy with points everywhere. He is just massive. Like when people see the pictures, this thing's got his left G2 is split, but the mass on his left G2 may be bigger than any parts of his main beam. Like, it is that freaking big.
Well, let's put it this way. I think what Matt said, when the deer, when they actually end up being able to score the deer, his mass measurements alone scored in the upper 40s.
Correct.
So I just want to put into perspective here. The great Hambino deer that I killed that scored 186, he had a 13-inch inside spread, but his mass measurements, just mass alone, scored 46 inches. So, like, when you think about scoring deer, like, we're killing deer in Michigan that are like 110, 120 inches. Like, we're talking about almost half of what our deer score only in mass. Yeah. Like, that's just a different caliber of deer.
Yeah. And I've seen the great Hambino in person multiple times now. His bases are the most massive I've ever seen on a whitetail. So when Matt talks about this story of this, basically it's kind of like a mainframe 8, mainframe 9, that he's matching the same kind of mass that the great Hambino has. It's a world-class animal, period.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely is. I want to pivot real quick and do some partner reads, and then we're going to jump right into this episode because it is kind of a longer episode, so I want to get right into it. But guys, broadheads, you guys know where I stand with the broadheads and the Helix broadheads. For 2 years now, I am 100% with these things, and I can't be any happier with these broadheads, and they've answered a lot of questions that a lot of people have been asking this year with the FJ4. It's a It's a fixed blade, right bevel still, but it's got bleeders, and they're 1/4-inch bleeders. I used them this year and shot 2 deer with them, and the blood trail is significantly better. You can definitely tell that. And one thing that they really upped the game with this year is how sharp that they come to you from the factory. Like, it's ridiculous. So if you guys want to try them out, use the code FALLHX10 to save some money. You can get a 1-pack to try them out, and I think it's like $24 or $25, or you can get a 3-pack, which is in the mid $70 range. If you just want to try one out, get one, and if you like them, go for another 3-pack or for a 3-pack, and then you'll be all good. So go to helixbroadheads.com, check those out. Next is a big one for both of us. Latitude Outdoors is a huge partner of ours. Super nice guys. Had the best product of 2023 come out of at the ATA show. Their new climbing sticks. I do have a code. Use thefallpodcast, all one word, and to save 25% off on just about everything but the Classic 2, or not the Classic 2. I'm sorry, the Method 2 saddles. They will not work on the Method 2 saddles, that code. And I actually don't know if it'll work on the sticks yet. The sticks, if you guys want to, you need to get in line right now. The sticks are not available for purchase right now, but they're available for pre-order. So go to Latitude Outdoors and sign up for the newsletter. Put your email in. You got to sign up for the newsletter, because that is going to be, if you sign up for that newsletter, that'll be the first people that find out when they go on sale. So, and I highly recommend that you do that. Wouldn't you agree? I mean,
yes.
We've got to play around with these sticks, and you got to go do this.
Yep. And not only, the quality, the packability, everything about these sticks, the price point they're at, I'm telling you, if you're not in line, I don't know how many they're going to make on that first run, but I hope they're making a bunch, because at that price point, they are not going to last long.
Yeah. No, I agree. So go do that. The next one is Exodus trail cams. They are launching the new Rival trail cam right now. It's a budget cell cam. We haven't got these in our hands yet, but from everything we've heard and talked to the guys about, Jake and Cameron and Chad at Exodus, it's going to be a nice camera. I think the price point is $179.99 for a cell cam. It's got all the great features that an Exodus has. The 5-year no BS, no BS, no. I can't remember. I don't have it right in front of me, so I don't know.
Yeah.
No theft. Yeah, the theft warranty. So, still they lead the league in warranty, in my opinion, customer service as well, second to none. So, ExodusOutdoorGear.com. Go check those out. Vector arrows. Use the code FALL10 at VectorCustomShop.com. And lastly, Garmin bow sights. So go check those out as well. And that's it. That's all we got for you today. I want to get into this interview with Matt, because I know it's going to be a banger. So
yeah,
what do
it's
you
really
say?
good. Yeah, it's
hey,
the guy. This buck makes the guy puke. So just go listen.
I forgot about that. Legitimately,
For real,
the guy pukes. I forgot. We cannot go to the interview yet because we got questions to ask each other.
Ooh, good call.
And I do want to say, David, if you're watching this on video, David, I look like I'm on an HD video. David is using a Fisher-Price little 4x3 camera, and it goes white and it goes dark, and it goes white and it goes dark. So you just got to bear with me on that one.
Hey, maybe we'll just start a GoFundMe and we'll get a new computer over here.
We need to get David a new computer, because he's using an older laptop that's it just needs a new camera.
All right, who's going first today, me or you, bud?
You go first.
Okay. This question is going to be based on kind of it's the perfect time of the year to ask this, honestly. Okay. What is a stronger feeling that runs through your head right now? The sadness of one season coming to an end, or the happiness and eagerness of the next season starting?
Happiness and eagerness.
Of the next season coming?
Yep, the next season. The moment that so this year when I was hunting, I knew I was just going to be hunting Michigan. I wasn't going to be traveling anywhere or nothing. The moment I killed my second buck, it started couple days after that buzzkill kind of felt like after killing that deer, it kind of fell off. It was like, okay, how am I planning for next year? And that happiness really started like, let's go. And now for me, January and February are huge months for me. Like a lot of people are like just done, just don't want to like think about hunting. Or me right now, I am scouring the new gear. I am scouring where can I in like the packs. Like right now, you and I have been like big into like, I thought I had the best pack last year until we went to ATA, and I now might have to spend some more money. But and then the other thing is like the 1 acre project. I've kind of like neglected it for the last couple years, but there's some things in the works for the 1 acre, and that is something that. But the thing is that we got some snow today, so Daddy's gonna go snowmobiling, and a lot of the hunting stuff's gonna take the back seat because literally this is the first like good snowfall that we've had all year, and we're basically in February already. So I'm like gonna go rip the old 600 and just start ditch banging.
Oh yeah. For all the listeners wondering, so here in Michigan we haven't really had much snow since December, and it's probably about on average every 2 or 3 days Aaron sends a picture of himself sitting on a snowmobile running inside of his garage just waiting to go out and ride the damn thing.
It's tough. I'm leaving in 2 weeks, literally probably the week that this would be airing. Probably I'm going up to Paradise up in the UP where there's like 5 feet of snow, and my wife and I are gonna rip around for the weekend and have fun. But like I just want to be able to just pull out of my driveway with the sled and just rip around the field. So that's what I'm doing tomorrow.
Good deal, man. Good deal.
Yeah. So my question for you is, what is a trophy to you? And this could be very relative, and I understand that. So let's just, I'll just say, well, you know what? However you want to answer it.
Let me rip it. Okay. So I get it. A lot of people, they look at a trail camera picture and they first instantly, they text their buddies and they say, well, what do you think he scores, right? That's a big thing. That's a really popular thing that people do. I don't think like that. It's like an eye test for me. I can look at a trail cam picture and right away go, yep, that's a target, or nope, that's not a target. And the same thing hunting is, when you have that animal coming in and you have that instinct of instantly like, oh, I want to shoot him. That is a trophy to me. And every deer I have on my wall to me is a trophy, but they're all different sizes. But they all have a different meaning behind them. It may have been something different going on in my life at that time, or just the kind of year I had, or maybe I had someone with me. So to me, a trophy does not have one singular number attached to it. A trophy is at that time, like if you're choosing to harvest that animal, that is the trophy at that exact time in that exact moment that day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
that's for me at least.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, that's the trophy's in the eye of the beholder, and it literally, for my dad, a trophy's different than for me, and it's just, and I don't know, it's definitely, I like you use the term on this podcast, the eye test. When I immediately look at that deer and I'm like, that's probably a deer I should be pursuing. So
I do that. I'll do that right away with a singular trail camera picture. I can look at it and go, yep, I want to shoot that deer. I do not think about one bit. I'm like, okay, is he 118 or is he 122? Like there's no thinking like that. It is, if he pleases my eyes, that's it. End of discussion.
Yep.
He's on the target list.
100%. Yep. No, agreed. So cool. Awesome. That's I'm going to cut it off because we don't want to go down a rabbit hole with these things. That's not what it's for. But I'm going to leave you guys with, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating, leave a written review, leave those reviews. The 5-star ratings are great. The reviews are awesome as well because that's the feedback that we like to look at and take, but also it helps us in the rankings. We want to move up in the rankings. Help us out there. So do that. If you listen on Spotify, do that as well. You can do a 5-star rating there. Those help, also. So thank you guys very much. And here's this interview with Matt. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Fall Podcast. And today is episode number 5 of One Giant Mistake. And today we've got Matt Williams from Northeast Ohio. There's a trend here, fellas. You are number 3 or 4, 3 maybe? Is it 3? That is from Ohio. Yeah. Like all these, Ohio's flying under the radar. But you can't fool me, Matt. You can't. There's big freaking deer down there, dude.
Not where I'm from, I promise. Not where I'm from.
Yeah, you better. He's just holding his hands up.
Yeah, don't look.
Don't look. I was gonna say you better just start knocking all those deer down off the behind you. Jeez, oh Pete's, man. Well, Matt Williams, thank you for coming on, man, and doing this. This is gonna be a great podcast. We know Cliff Notes versions of this episode of the deer and the story, 3 years of history, giant deer, and a couple mistakes. I like that.
Oh, multiple mistakes. Yeah.
Well,
it only makes the story that much better.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Matt, before we get into this, kind of give everybody who you are. They know you're from Northeast Ohio now, but who you are, what you do for a living, and obviously you can see behind you, deer hunting is your passion. So kind of give us that elevator pitch.
Yeah. So Matt Williams, like I said earlier, Northeastern Ohio. And when you think of Northeastern Ohio, it's definitely not the area of Ohio where people scream giants. I feel like you have to go a little bit south. So where I'm at, definitely good quality deer, but I feel we have to work a little bit harder for our deer just because they're not as common as they would if you went to Southern Ohio. But yeah, my day job, I'm an install foreman for a robotic dairy milking equipment company. So okay. I install, the brand's called Laley. I install Laley robotic milkers and run a small crew, and we just travel around Northeastern Ohio, a little bit into PA, and we install milking equipment. I got a great crew. I've been doing it for, I think this will be going on my 6th year. Got a wife that supports me like crazy, because anybody else that's big into hunting, you got to have a significant other that is also okay with it and enjoys it, because without them, we would not be able to do this. So killed a few decent deer, nothing giant, but I pride myself in kind of killing a good deer every year. I'm trying to get to that giant stage, but hence this podcast, I keep making mistakes. So,
dude, the one over your left shoulder looks pretty damn good. I'm not gonna lie.
He looks framey.
That's my biggest year to date. He goes 163.
Dude, so, I haven't killed a giant yet. That's a giant.
Well, I need to humble myself, but I'm chasing that booner mark, and for some reason, I cannot get it. I keep making mistake after mistake after mistake, and you'd think I would learn. But hopefully next year will be the year.
Yeah, man.
I got a question for you, Matt. With your profession and what you're doing out there, visiting so many dairy farms, has some of your job opened up opportunities for like more hunting land?
Yes, it has. It's opened up some opportunities for me. Unfortunately, most of our jobs that we're doing now are 2-3 hours away. So unfortunately, it's not ideal, because I can find as good or not bigger deer closer to the home, or closer to my house, excuse me. And I just don't want to travel that far. But yeah, it has opened up opportunities for me. So
I want to ask you one thing. What's your address?
Yeah, I hear you.
Big deer close to home. What's that address?
Every time he books a new job, he just automatically gets on Onyx and looks at like, okay, where am I? I'm not looking for just the street address here. We're going to look at what Farmer Joe has. Oh, great. He's got about 4,200 acres. Perfect.
I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Why do you think I asked? I knew better.
Yeah. The only thing that I will say about dairy farms, they cut silage Most of the guys, all their crops, they harvest very early unless they have standing beans. But most guys will run like, beans that they'll harvest, but their corn and their like alfalfa fields, man, they tear them up. And it seems like they have a lot of tillable ground, not a lot of woods. And once that crop comes off, because they cut it for silage, so it comes off super early. Once that comes off, it just seems like the deer kind of vanish. But every once in a while, you'll find a honey hole on a dairy farm.
Yeah.
So
you bet.
I'm definitely not going to turn down the property.
Would you say majority of your hunting is done in ag ground? Like
a mixture of big timber and farmland. Yeah.
Okay, pretty flat. So I mean, I know you're on the northeast side, so you go a little farther south, you're going to start getting into a lot of hills.
Yeah, so if I drive an hour and a half south, I can get into big timber.
Okay.
And then if I stay around my house, it's mostly farm ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
well, that hour and a half drive, like even though to a lot of the listeners, it sounds like a little bit of a drive, but it's not all that bad if you want a little bit different flavor of hunting, a whole different, maybe somewhat caliber and age class of bucks down there, and in completely different terrain to go hunt something different.
Yep. And I actually, surprising enough, I actually enjoy hunting big timber more than I do farm ground. I just love the terrain, and I love the pinches and the thermals and like how wind swirls and bowls, and I just love like big gnarly big timber deer.
Yeah, That's sure.
Awesome. Would you say big timber? Well, no. I mean, I'm gonna ask you the question. Would you say hunting big timber teaches you more?
100%.
Yeah.
I feel like big timber taught me how to be a woodsman. Mm-hmm. And I feel like farm country taught me how to kill deer. So I'm very happy.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that I get to hunt both, but I would never take away the experiences that I've had on big timber, because I've just learned how to read such smaller sign and capitalizing on stuff that you would just walk past on farm country. So
that's a really good point that you just made about just looking for the smallest bit of sign in such a big vast area.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's a great analogy, because I hunt both as well. At my house, it's ag, a little farther away at my family farm, big timber, and I would definitely agree with you on that. Like, but I would say like the sign that I do find in ag, in my situation, I feel like I find a lot more sign laid down, but it's not the sign that you're like the hot sign. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
I think you could say that for big woods as well, but like I could walk on a field edge over here and I could see 32 scrapes in about 600 yards. But it's just like, which one of those could be the right one? Or, I've learned to really weed out the sign that's just cold. It might look hot, but it's cold. And I've really learned to like, it's weird for me when I see it in farm country. It's like, woof. It
smacks you in the face.
100%, man.
Yeah.
And that is one thing that I've like really learned and really capitalized in ag country, where it's, man, the last 3-4 years, it's really paid off for me.
Yeah. I when I hear you guys talk about like the big woods like that compared to like say farm ground, I have a thought of what the answer will be, but like when the big woods down south in Ohio compared to the farm ground up where you live, when you're hunting that big woods, does that feel like it just hunts a lot bigger than what you have back at home?
Yeah, it does. Obviously you're dealing with most of your acreage being timber, so it's kind of overwhelming for a guy that can't really pick it apart on a map, because you don't know where to start. Where with ag or farm country, a lot of times you'll have those deer in fence rows or little pockets of woods or something like that, river bottoms, where you can really narrow where the deer are and honestly just hunt I don't want to say hunt the edges, but basically you can just hunt a food source and see a ton of deer. And you know, who doesn't like seeing deer, in my opinion? You know, like everybody wants to see deer. That's why we hunt. So I mean, you're definitely going to see more on farm ground, and big timber is definitely it's tough, but it's very rewarding, and there's some giants in big timber. I tell you what,
I just got one back from the taxidermist yesterday. It's fun to look at them.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, it comes from not very far away from you, to be honest with you.
So, drop me a pin after this podcast.
Hey, I can do that. I'll meet you there with bells on, and we can tackle it together.
There we go. Hey,
I'm down.
Yeah. So, well, hey, I want to get into this story. I want to unpack this bag. This deer is giant. I don't want to let too many cats out of the bag right off the rip, but let's get into this deer. First of all, did you name the deer? Did you nickname the deer? Do you believe in that? Like, I know there's some guys who are like, I don't nickname my deer, which is fine. But
I don't get crazy with names, but I did name him the Mass Buck.
The Mass Buck. Okay.
Just because he had crazy mass.
Oh,
so
I'll
refer to him as the Mass Buck.
Okay, and that's good because and you've probably listened to a couple episodes of the series here, and it's just nice to be able to like, oh, that was Ghost, or that was Crabs or whatever. So it's just nice to refer to him as that because, and with Cody's, like I got confused sometime with Cody's story when he was talking about multiple different bucks. You know what I mean? I'm like, wait a second, like where are we at? You know what I mean? So when we talk about mass, we know it's the deer that is the one you were going after. So cool. So let's start right off the rip. Where did this story start? Like, what year was it, and when did he like come on your radar when you were like, damn, this is a big deer?
Yeah. So actually, the year that I found him was 2019, and I found him by doing what everybody else does in the summer. When you get bored, you grab the wife and some ice cream, and you go and you look for deer. And I actually found him in a piece that I really wanted to hunt, or I should say an area I really wanted to hunt. And I found him in the summer of 2019. And he was, I won't throw out a number yet because I don't know if it'll ruin the story, but he was the biggest that year. And actually, I wasn't able to hunt him the first year I found the deer. So my story might be a little bit different than others. I had 2 years to hunt him, and then 1 year of basically trying to gain access. And I did everything that I possibly could and just never could gain access. So I found him, and I'll tell as much as I can on the podcast for the story's sake, but I don't want to give away too many details because I've had, once that deer got killed, I had so many people reach out to me that I had no idea were hunting the deer, and they all wanted to know where he summered because nobody knew. And as far as I know, I'm sure that there's other guys out there that just haven't come forward, but as far as I know, the guys that have come forward to me saying that, where was this deer at, none of them knew where he summered. And to be honest with you, he summered in, I'll just use this analogy, like the old lady's backyard. Like that's the analogy that I'm going to use. He summered in a place that was so overlooked that I drove by it 30 times and never knew he was there. And one day I just kind of looked at it from a different angle and got lucky and saw him out in some thick cover. And my jaw just absolutely hit the ground. Brakes are squealing on the truck. Wife's slapping me, wondering what the heck's going on. And I'm like, I just saw a giant. And we pull over, and of course, a big deer like that, you always slam on the brakes, turn around, and he's never there. So I ended up trying. I knocked on, I can't remember exactly how many doors, but I knocked on I'm going to say 20 to 25 doors. And there's one big property, let's say roughly 1,000 acres, and then around that there's a bunch of 20, 30, 40, 50, etc. that kind of surround it. So I knocked on every door that I thought would be a good opportunity to chase this deer, and either A, they didn't allow hunting, or B, there was somebody already hunting it, or it was leased out. So I really was not having any luck, and I tried everything from. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, when you first saw this deer, obviously you're trying to, you're a lot of emotions are going on. You forget that your wife's in the truck. I would have probably forgot that. And
her head knocked off the glass.
Just yelling at her to pull Onyx up, and she's like, "What's Onyx?"
She's got a goiter, and you're just like, "Look at this deer," It's like, no,
take the wheel.
So, yeah. So was it? And I think I know the answer to this, but you know where this deer's at now. So were you frequenting this area like every night now to keep tabs on him?
Yeah, all the time. And when I messaged you, you asked if I had any summer footage of him, and this deer, from the day I found him to the day he died, I swear he had my number, because I do some filming as well. Like, we have a YouTube channel and everything, and I wanted to get footage for it because I thought that if I killed this deer, it'd make a great story. So every time I took the camera out, he'd never show up. But every time that I was just kind of like in the area and I'm like, you know what, I'll just swing 20 minutes out of my way and see if he's out there, he'd be out there, and I didn't have my camera with me. And I got to the point where I just wanted to keep my camera 24/7 in my truck. But, that's not realistic. And, yeah, I tried. I would circle the block almost, nightly, trying to figure out what he was doing, where he was going, and trying to get a little bit of the puzzle of where he liked to summer, hoping that maybe I could get him back in the winter on his winter range, going back to where he summered. And it just wasn't able to land any property. And the booger about it is I wasn't able to get any footage of him, and he was the biggest that year, so it was definitely frustrating. But,
well, you talk about knocking on the 25 doors, and so it tells you that he's out there working at probably a lot of these smaller properties. Now, you've talked about this 1,000-acre piece, or roughly around there. Did you actually ever go knock on that door?
Yeah, and actually that's the piece that I gained access to, and we'll get into that a little bit down the road.
So before we get into that, though, the old lady's quotes there, the old lady that this deer lived on, was that property being hunted? Like, did you know that? It wasn't.
100%. There was no chance anybody was stepping foot on that property with intentions to kill anything. It was one of the fastest, sharpest nose that I have ever got in my life. Like,
oh my gosh,
my tail was tucked walking back to my truck.
Do you think it would have changed if you drove down the driveway with a Prius and came out and said you just wanted to do some landscaping, maybe with a weapon in your hand? Do you think it would have changed? Or
there was a really nice swing on the front porch. I was eyeballing that the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
You just know, as soon as she looks out the window, sees him pulling in, she just got a ticker. She's like, here comes number 38 for the year.
Oh, I guarantee it. And then, I guarantee it, because I found that once I never hunted that area. I always wanted to. And there was a reason why there was a lot of deer in that area, because nobody allowed hunting, and the places that did allow hunting were already leased out. And I'm not the type of person to lease ground. That's just, I have nothing against it, but I would rather just knock on doors and kind of grind that way. So I didn't have any intentions on offering any kind of crazy money. For one, I don't have it. And for two, I would rather not hunt that way, but that's just my personal opinion. So
it's funny. You hear a lot of stories about guys that they're trying to get permission on pieces that they see a big deer around, but all the permission or all the pieces they're asking for permission on, they don't allow hunting. And it's like, it's that perfect recipe to grow a big deer in that area.
Yep.
So
that
go ahead.
That year in 2019, how old? I mean, maybe exactly what he was then, but at that time, how old did you actually think this buck was?
I think he was in his prime, so either 4.5 or 5.5 would be my
Yeah.
guess. Because that was the year he had his biggest rack, and then he started to go downhill after that. So he
Yeah.
might have even have been older, but
Okay.
I think in my area, I mean, you always hear about deer getting into the 9, 10 years old, but at least there's too much pressure. I mean, when he died, I mean, we'll get into that later, but there's just too much pressure around me, and like it seems like everybody hunts properties that people allow them to hunt on. So I mean, there was multiple people chasing this deer, so I don't think that he could have got to the age that he did.
Yeah. Yeah. When you
Yeah.
were seeing him in the summertime, was he kind of a loner, or were you seeing him often with a couple other bucks? Like everyone talks about the summertime bachelor groups, but
Yeah.
man, the more I hear these stories about these really high end caliber deer, the more it's like it's become a trend of like they're just a complete loner most the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So you'd be right. He was an extreme loner. Yeah, and also he was a real aggressive deer as well. So I think that kind of his personality being aggressive kind of hurt him with any kind of bachelor group. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and we'll get into that later because there was some bigger deer. Once I gained permission the following year, I ran into some other deer that I was more than happy to shoot. And then once he showed up, they all vanished because he was just such a bully buck.
Yeah.
Can
But
you
yeah,
explain?
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, sorry, you finished there. I was cutting you off.
No, I was just gonna say that he lived in this little secluded, let's just say if you went 100 yards off the road, you already missed him. He
Mm.
stayed in this little secluded spot that, like, I promise you, thousands of people went by, and I don't know how he wasn't found before. I mean, obviously somebody had to have known about him, but I don't know how the local hunters didn't know about him being there because it was just such an overlooked spot. Really wasn't a lot of deer in that area either, and I think that was another reason why nobody really knew about him, because there was a couple private ag fields within a mile or two that you'd count 20, 30 deer out in the field at night. And I feel like everybody wanted to check out those ag fields when they were scouting and road scouting. And I just don't think that they didn't look at the little small overlooked stuff. So
Yeah.
So
They should have been looking at the elderly lady's bird feeder in her backyard.
yeah.
tell me
Definitely.
this. Now, if you don't want to answer, don't answer it. You're not going to offend. I gotta ask the tough questions here.
Go ahead.
Was this a urban environment?
Yes and no. So there is a 1,000-acre farm that is, river bottom and ag. There are certain pieces. So I'm going to say like a couple mile radius of his range. I would say, yeah, there are some urban spots where like somebody might own 5, 6 acres here, 5 or 6 acres there, 10 acres there. Most of it's probably around that 20 to 40 acre mark. So
Okay.
yeah, it's not huge tracts of land. There's definitely some houses involved.
It just sounds like to me that this deer it sounds like he's an older deer. He just found a pocket where he knows he's not going to get pressured. He's safe. There's no hunting. He doesn't know that there's no hunting, but there's no pressure. It sounds like he just found this little pocket and he's like, this is where I'm going to live. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And whether that's urban or not, I was just curious just because, you see a lot of big deer like that just kind of.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, you just see a lot of deer that, just hole up in areas like that and they just freaking get big and then you don't know where they go, so it just sounds like he just found a pocket at Mrs. Clark's and whatever her name is. And
yeah, you nailed it
there
on the head. Yeah, you nailed it on the head. He lived in, I'm not going to get into details because there are some good deer still in the area.
No, don't, man.
But yeah, you nailed it on the head. He lived in a small little overlooked spot that everybody drives by. So
well, and to be honest with you, here around me in Michigan this year, big deer got killed. It would be, I didn't think it was a gun, but it was a couple weeks into gun season, and everybody was like, I mean, this deer scored in the 150s, maybe touched 160, and it's like, Jesus, where do you live? You know, and he ended up found out he ended up living in a little pie shape, right off the backside of a cemetery, and there was just a little pie shape in there that somebody owns in there, and literally it's like nobody hunts it, and he just wandered out for some food one night and
got shot.
A hunter caught him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a big deer, you know, and I got to remember when he got killed. I want to say it was in December, which is unheard of around here. Killing a deer that big around here in December is just like everything's usually killed the first 2 or 3 days of gun season. So that was just crazy. So I totally get where you're at with it.
Yep. And then I want to touch on one more point before I go into 2020. I found him on the piece that I got permission for in the late October, early November time frame. I can't remember exactly when it was. I was doing a lap around the area, driving country roads, seeing if I could find him. One day after work, I didn't have enough time to hunt, so I figured I might as well use the time to try to locate this deer. And I ended up finding him on the big chunk of property that I ended up getting permission on. So that's where I knew that at least he rutted on that property, because I saw him late October, early November out dogging does in a field. So that made me really excited, and I really tried to get on that property, which ultimately I did, but it took a long time.
Yeah. So in 2019, you know, that deer caught your eye enough where you were spending time all fall kind of looking for him. But on the opposite side of that, in 2019, you actually weren't hunting any of those pieces in and around where that buck was calling home.
Correct.
Yeah.
How far roughly, don't have to give exact, but roughly is where you caught up with him in October to where he like lived?
Couple miles.
Okay. So he was traveling.
He traveled, but he wasn't like one of those deer where he went 6, 7, 8 miles, you know, and that's not very uncommon in our area, to be honest. I've heard of a lot of big deer getting killed and people posting pictures of, you know, velvet and whatnot, and it was 6, 7 miles away. So he definitely moved, but it wasn't like relocating 10 miles. So I think if he would have went that far, I wouldn't have found him, to be honest.
Well, and being like possibly an older deer, you know, home ranges shrink a little bit, you know, and it's nothing for a deer. I mean, when you look at ag where it's wide open, it's nothing for a deer to run a mile.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They could do that in 20 seconds.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
You know?
I mean, we've all seen it. You know, you're cruising down the road and it's November and there's a buck hot on a doe and they're just paralleling your vehicle and it's like, shit, they just covered that whole square mile in less than 2 minutes, you know?
Yeah. I don't think people realize how many, or excuse me, I don't think people realize how far deer actually travel.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you guys do.
Yeah. Well, before we jump into the 2020 season, why don't you describe for the listeners what he actually looked like in the 2019 year?
So the deer was basically a mainframe 8 his whole life, that I knew of him, I should say. But he had additional tines. But just imagine a mainframe 8, and I'm getting into the story now. So he was probably in the 190s the first year I found him as a main. And I'm not exaggerating, because the year that I hunted him the hardest, I don't have sheds, but I know the guy that has the sheds, and they scored in the mid 80s.
As an 8?
Well, he's got trash, but I'm saying a mainframe 8. He had points kind of, you know, maybe a 9, you could say a mainframe 9. Like he had one dagger point, but like his left side's got 4 points, his G2 splits, his right side's got like a dagger on it. I'm talking about the year that I hunted him the hardest. But yeah, the pictures don't do this deer justice, because until you hold that mass in your hands, like he had I think high 40s mass measurements.
So you didn't send me a picture of the deer in 19, right? Because you didn't have anything of him in 19.
No, I don't have any pictures of him in 19, but I can promise you he was bigger than all the pictures I sent you.
Because I just started looking, and one of the pictures in 20, I mean, he's big.
Yeah.
Like he's big. You know what I mean? And so I would agree with you though. Like there are some trail cam pictures of that deer when it's like, man, he just doesn't look that big. And then you flip and then he gives you a different look and it's like, oh, damn, no, he's big.
Yeah, you know? He was one of those deer that it was so hard to, I was guessing him in the high 70s, low 80s off of pictures. And then once I saw him in person, of 20, I immediately knew like that deer's special, because he was just, the camera pictures just don't make him look, I don't know what it is about that deer. He's just not photogenic. He just does not look that big.
Before we get into 20 though, I have two questions, I think. One question is, in 19, was there a buzz about the deer? Did you ever hear you're staying pretty quiet, which I would too, but like, did you ever hear any scuttle of like, man, there's a big deer lives behind Miss Johnson's? You know what I mean?
No, I didn't hear anything about it.
And it goes back to what you said, like a lot of guys, but you would think that this deer would mess up once, like he did with you. You know what I mean? Where you just caught him. You'd think somebody else would just like catch him one day, and it's like, damn, that's a big deer.
Yeah, I will say one thing. I have found some of my bigger deer to really like secluded fields, because if you think about a buck, right? Even as a small 1.5-year-old, bucks get more attention than does do, period. You see a buck driving down the road, what do? You stop, you glass him, you look at him. If there's does out in the field, you just keep driving. So I've learned that at a young age, bucks are almost taught to, like, we always talk about this, they hate pressure, right? Like big mature deer hate pressure. And I think what happened was he found this little like roll that you could see the secluded field that he would feed in the summer, but you could only see it on 10 to 15 yards of the road while you were driving. So if you didn't look at the exact right time, most guys just drove by it because it's like, oh, you can't see back there. And there's one little pocket that you could see. And I just got lucky, and one day just turned my head to look into that secluded field, and and there was only a certain part of the field that you could see too. I guarantee you he was out there almost every night, but you just couldn't see him from the road. So I think that's why not a lot of people knew about him. And then I'll get into some more juicy details when I was hunting him. And then when he moved to his, let's say, early fall, kind of like rut territory range, he lived in something very, very similar that just, I don't want to get into it right now. But
it sounds to me like this deer, it's just like a carbon copy of an older deer. Like you might know his age, but I'm thinking like when you're saying this, I'm thinking like a 7-year-old deer, 6 or 7 years old, where it's like, this deer doesn't get up far from his bed. He knows what he needs to do. He's been around the block. He knows, he doesn't have to do the extra work to get what he's patient. He's the old guy that's like, I've been there, little buck, young buck. It's like, you go run them everywhere, and I know they'll come back to me. It's just one of those things. So like, we're talking about an anomaly here. We're talking about a deer that, like, this deer he's been around the block. He knows this area, and he is on top of his game. And for him to, honestly, probably where you caught him at, he probably didn't bed too far from, where he was feeding. You know what I mean? Yep. This is crazy. This is awesome. I'm getting chills right now.
Yeah. But it's what's wild is a lot of these stories, these guys kind of watch these deer grow up, right? But when Matt comes across this buck, he's already said he believes he was in his prime at that time already.
Sure.
So whatever Matt's already seeing, this buck's been doing this for years. He's got everyone in that area figured out. He knows how to move. He knows how to stay alive. You know, like he's in his prime. So he's maybe 5, 6, 7 years old already. So like you're walking into the boxing ring with a veteran already.
Yeah. So and you bring up a great point that I probably should have mentioned. That's another reason why I targeted him so heavily, because I knew that if he could get to maturity and stay alive with the pressure that was around him, because although I got no's on a lot of places because I didn't allow hunting, I also got a lot of no's because they already had hunters or it was leased. So like the amount of pressure that deer was getting, I knew that there was some kind of haunt somewhere that he was going to, and he stayed year round. And honestly, like, I don't know where he went the majority of the season. I know where he bedded, let's say mid-October to like December. I knew where he lived, but after that, I still have no idea where he went. Like during gun season in Ohio, he vanished. And obviously there's so much pressure around me. He crawled in some groundhog hole somewhere that nobody, behind, old granny's house somewhere where nobody is allowed to hunt. And he knew that he was safe.
With all the baiting that goes on in Ohio too, like how did this deer not screw up once?
I'm telling you I will say that this deer, and I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody else. Like I've got a lot to learn, but once I find a deer, I really like hone in on him. And, a lot of times I get lucky and kill him. I will say that this deer taught me so much that I am more thankful that I didn't kill him, because this deer is by far the smartest animal I've ever chased, period. Like I will say that to this day, he's the smartest animal I've ever chased.
I was going to say that, and I didn't even experience it just from the last talking to you for the last 20, 30 minutes. Like I'm telling you, this deer's an anomaly. Like you don't hear this stuff about a deer. I mean, you do, but it's not a high percentage,
Yeah. And I think Matt made such a great point that it would have been very easily for people to get discouraged because the amount of door knocking and the landowners saying, well, people already hunt here. But I'm going to give you a bunch of credit for recognizing that, hey, there's a bunch of people here, but this deer he's 5, 6, 7 years old already. He has to have a weakness somewhere, but no one's capitalizing on it yet. Where you didn't get discouraged knocking on those doors like that. That's a great that observation right there. That's top tier in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I appreciate it. That.
So let's get into. So did anything else happen in 19 after you saw him in late October, November?
No. Obviously I was hunting myself, and I was hunting different properties, targeting different deer. And I actually ended up killing this deer right here on a property, not even close. I mean, different counties away. But I just ended up targeting some different deer and just kind of chalked it off as like, okay, I know where he is, but until I gain access, I mean, I'm not, I can't do anything about it.
Right. So yeah. But you're still thinking about him though, right? I mean, he's still in the back of your mind.
Like I even tried a little bit late season. We all work, and like I don't do this for a living. So like I'm basically a weekend warrior. I take 1 week off a year to hunt the rut, and I call it my rutcation in Ohio. I should stop doing it because I don't really capitalize very much during the rut, but but I always think that my odds are the greatest, so I always take off a week. But I'm a weekend warrior, and I tried to hunt more than try to find him. But I did go late season, and I tried looking for him, but I never was able to locate him. And scouting from the road, in my opinion, is almost impossible after a hunting season, because they're so on edge that, plus you got this big old truck driving down the road, like they hear you coming, and like they hear you slowing down, they see your brake lights, and they just tuck into the timber. And I probably drove by him a million times and never knew he was there because he would never let me see him. So,
For sure.
It's frustrating. I wish there was a way that I could scout, because in Ohio you can't jacklight. So like I can't spotlight at night looking for deer. And I wish there was a different way that I could scout, but all I've found is just burning some gasoline and burning your wallet, because that's all I can do to find deer.
Dude, you just need to get a Prius, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I know it.
Roll with a tampon on 4 wheels and just go scout.
I know it.
I don't think I'll offend anybody on listening to this podcast, because I doubt we have any Prius listeners.
your scouting perimeter is only as far as your extension cord can go.
That's right. That's right.
Boom, the front end comes up. It's like, jeez. Anyway.
But yeah, I wasn't able to find him. I wasn't able to find him the rest of the year. So
coming into 20, let us, like, you probably shed hunting too. Are you trying to get shed hunting permission?
Yeah, and that's a way that I gained access. I got permission to shed hunt a couple places. Was never able to find the sheds. Found out that I don't know of anybody that picked up his sheds from 19, but I found out that where his sheds were picked up from 20 was very, very close to where he was summering. And I don't know if the guy kind of snuck in there. He probably had permission. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I tried really hard in that area. Nobody would give me permission to shed hunt. So unless he was a friend or something like that, which he probably was, I put on a lot of miles and did not find his sheds. So but yeah, going into the 2020 season, I'm going to pull up my notes real quick so I don't forget anything. Knocked on a lot of times. What I'll do is I'll knock on the same doors from year to year. So I knocked on 20, 25 doors again, and a lot of times they'll tell you no the first time, and just don't give up, because a lot of times, you're a stranger coming to them, right? Like, they don't know who you are, and a lot of times if you come back, they might recognize you. They might remember you. And like, I came back and asked to shed hunt and, stuff like that. So there was a couple people that were on the fence about it. The 1,000-acre farm, it's a little bit less than that, but I don't want to give an exact number. They let me shed hunt. And they kind of, old school farmer, like, I'm not sure. I want you to hunt. Me and my buddy kind of hunt. We've been hunting for years, kind of thing. And I asked for just the section that I saw him in. And let's just for podcast sakes, let's just say it was the north end of the property. So I asked specifically for the north end of the property, and I just said, I just want to be able to hunt this little section. And this was in the summer. I seen him a couple times that summer, but not as frequent as I did in 19. And I only saw him maybe 2 or 3 times in 20 in the summer while scouting.
And what did he look like when the first day you saw him? Like when he showed back up and you're like, how big was he?
He's big. Those are all the pictures that I sent you. That's 20. So he's in the mid 80s is what his shed's taped at. So mass for days. He's got like a trident point, split G2, just a giant deer. And
that G2 that's my favorite part of that deer. That is his left G2 is unreal.
Yeah. So the farmer that had that big chunk of ground, I could tell that was my best chance, because everybody else pretty much flat out no. The farmer kind of him-hawed around about it. So he told me to come back in a month and talk to him again. So, me being me, I'm persistent, and I went back. And a lot of times I will kind of throw a little secret out there for anybody that's grinding, knocking on doors. A lot of times these old school farmers will almost like test you. And I've found that they'll kind of like just say, hey, come back in 2 weeks and then talk to me. You'll show up in 2 weeks and they'll be like, well, I never really thought about it. Come back in like another 2 weeks and we'll talk about it. And I feel like they're almost testing you to see how dedicated you are. And that I might be diving deep into it, but I've found that when somebody tells me to come back, I'm always back the exact time they tell me to come, because I just feel like it shows the farmer that I'm dedicated, I'm interested, and I'm not just your average,
Yep. I
Joe
want to show
Blow out
something
there.
here real quick. This is the deer in 2020.
Yep, that's him.
And this picture does not do him justice. But I can tell you right now, this deer is giant.
Yeah.
This deer, mama.
Yeah.
He's got so much mass, dude. He's got to have 45 inches of mass alone.
Yeah. So when they scored them sheds, I think it was in the hot upper 40s for mass measurements.
Yeah.
That'd put him in the 80s.
Yeah.
And that left G2 is as massive as his main beams are.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's your typical Ohio deer. Like when everybody thinks of giant,
that's typical.
Massy, well,
I'm kidding.
Yeah, but
Packing the family up.
Ohio. Yeah. Everybody thinks of Ohio for mass deer, and he's definitely that typical Ohio deer.
Okay, so when you seen him in 20, the first couple times, those were just summer scout trips.
Yep. And he in the exact same spot he was in 19.
Really?
Yep. Almost to the T. And what was kind of weird was the crop rotation happened. So I thought that I was going to have to find him again. And he must have just loved that spot enough where he didn't care what he was eating on that summer. So crop rotation happened and he never moved. So
yeah. When you first seen him, did you instantly know it was him?
Yeah, he had the same frame the year before. He was bigger, had more trash, but I could tell he had the same frame. And then once there's a characteristic of this deer, he's blind in one eye.
Mm-hmm. So I saw that.
So I knew 100% that it was him in 21 because he was blind in his eye, but he went downhill significantly from 20 to 21. So, but I knew it was him because he got a lot cleaner, kept the mask, but got a lot cleaner, and he still had that blind eye. So, yeah. I mean, you guys are probably right. He's probably a lot older than what I originally said he was. But I was just thinking that he was in his primes, like 4 or 5, but you're probably right. He's probably older than that. So,
sure.
Yeah, so nothing crazy, nothing special with the summer stuff, basically the same story. But the secret of the story is I did not gain access. Ohio's hunting season, archery season opens up. It's always the last Saturday in September. It always falls around like the 24th of September. I did not gain access to hunt him until October 16th.
Okay.
So the farmer just kept playing those games with me, and he'd tell me to come back, and I'd come back, and I didn't think about it long enough, and he'd say, come back again. And long story short, finally I showed up. I think it was like, I don't know, the 15th of October or whenever that weekend was. And, this was my last straw. Like I'm a patient person, but I was getting to the point where it's like, okay, we need to find another deer. I'm wasting my time.
Oh gosh.
So by the grace of God, I guess I got lucky, and he said that I was allowed to hunt the piece that I wanted to hunt, which ends up being only about 100 acres. And but the kicker is, out of those 100 acres, maybe 30 of it is timber. The rest of it is open ag. So I didn't have a lot of ground to work with. So, but I seen him in 19 on that section of the farm. So I knew he was in that area. So I jumped for joy, thank the farmer so much for letting me hunt. And it was just persistence. I really didn't do anything special to gain permission. It was just persistence. And I offered to help him around the farm, but he never took me up on it. So October 16th, I get permission, and this is where it kind of gets crazy. So
it hasn't been crazy enough yet. I mean, it's
I'm
crazy.
excited, dude.
Yeah. So the whole time scouting that deer, I saw some good deer, around me, I'm very fortunate to see good deer, not a lot of giants, but a lot of good deer. So I've seen a lot of deer in like 30s, 40s, 50s, but nothing giant. And I get permission, and I had one trail camera, a cheap Wild Edge in my truck that I just kept in my truck for prime examples like this. He gave me permission, and that day I ran out there, hung a camera on an inside pinch of a field edge, and just ran off. Like, didn't walk the property, didn't do nothing. I wasn't even prepared.
What day was this?
I think October 16th. I can tell you exactly because I got a picture the next day of an absolute stud. So while I'm looking for my picture, I'll continue it. I hung that camera, and it was, like I said, it was just a cheap wild game, and walked away from the property. So on October 16th, I got the picture. So it had to have been the 15th of October when I gained permission, because the next day I got a picture, and I didn't send you this picture. I probably should have. I got a picture of a deer that's probably in the high 60s, low 70s that I had no clue existed.
Can you show it on the screen? Will you show it up? Or...
Yeah, I can. Let me pull up one that's like in the daylight.
If this deer's still alive, don't show it.
No, he disappeared. I don't know where he is. Let me turn up my brightness.
I don't want you to.
Can you guys, can you see that, or am I not doing a good enough job?
You can send me the picture too or something, and I can put it on the video. Zoom in a little bit.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good, man. This isn't live. Like, we're good here. I'll wait all day. Oh, sure. Okay.
Oh,
yep.
okay.
Okay.
So let me grab some more pictures of him.
Hey, it's not bad for a secondary buck,
Mama.
So I get a picture of that guy, and I had no idea that he.
Oh, look at zoom in on that one real quick.
On that deer.
I had no idea that deer even existed.
Look at the frame on him.
Yeah, so let me pull.
I'm looking for this 180, but if this one shows up, it's okay too.
So here he is at night too. Like, you can see how big his frame is.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Night pictures only make him look smaller, though. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, they do. So I guessed him to be in the high 60s, low 70s, and immediately when I got that picture, I'm no dummy. Like, I'm gonna shoot that deer if I see him. And I never got a picture of the masked buck during that time, and then I also got a picture of another deer. I don't have many pictures of him, but here's one that I have real quick on my phone. It's smaller, but super, he's spindly, but he's got real good tine length, and I imagined him to be in the high 50s, low 60s. Yeah. So I told myself,
either way, you just throw a trail camera out that day, and within hours you're picking up bucks that you didn't even know about were in the area, where you're like, dude, you might have stumbled across something really great right
now. Well, and also, if you need my permission to send me an Onyx pin, you have it. Just let's put it there. What
a guy.
We might be able to swap something up here in Michigan if you're interested in something like 100 inches or less.
Yeah, I'm down.
I can get you on that.
So I get those pictures, and I checked that camera probably like a couple days from setting it, and just knew that, okay, I've stumbled into something greater than what I was imagining it to be. Mm-hmm. So and that's October 16th through like the 18th of October of 2020. And I go in and I hang some more cameras. I scout it. It's got a river that runs through it. So like the 30 acres of timber is more river bottom than anything. And I scout that river bottom, and there's really not that much buck sign in it. And I was kind of getting nervous, but I had pictures of those deer. So I was thinking, man, they have to be here. I just don't know where they're at. So I thought maybe I didn't have the piece that I needed, but obviously that first deer I showed was in daylight. So I was like, of course, they're daylight in here. So, and I forgot to mention that property hasn't been hunted in, 10, 15 years. That big farm. it was him and his buddy, but they only gun hunted, and all they did was push woods. They never hunted out of blinds. They never sat in tree stands. The farmer would push the woods to his buddy, and then his buddy would push the woods to the farmer, and that's all they did.
Man.
And them bucks got used to just kind of surviving. And I think ultimately that's why the mass buck had a haunt during gun season, is because he knew that was where the most pressure was coming from. And I was fortunate to be one of the first bow hunters in there. And and then Arron, I sent you that video. There's 2 videos on October 24th. First, going back, I gained permission on the 15th. So I didn't have a lot of time to walk it, didn't have a lot of time to hang cameras. But on the 24th, I encountered the bigger typical. I'm not sure if my camera is blurry, but I encountered the bigger typical while hunting at about 40 yards and got some footage of him coming in. Never gave me a shot opportunity. 100% I was going to shoot that deer, but it was just learning. It was a learning curve because I set up. I hunt out of the saddle. Everything's hanging bang. I don't like running permanent sets. So
is this the encounter right here?
That's later on. That's the one that busted me.
Oh, okay.
There should be a video that's like 2 minutes long or so on October 24th.
It's not the one that your bow is in the picture. Not this one, right?
No, that's the mass buck.
Yeah, this is the big typical here.
This is the big typical. I have the video, but for some reason my phone's not liking the glare.
I'll put these up, but yeah. Oh, Mother of Mary. Mm-hmm.
Here he is, right here. You can see him a little bit better.
Gee. Yeah, I can see it right there if you keep the camera right there.
Yep.
So that's him. I encounter him at like 40 yards, and that opportunity is a little bit farther. That's probably like 60.
Sure.
But he was working that river bottom, and I just, immaturity and just not knowing the property well, I just set up in the wrong tree. And I wish walking in, I looked at a tree and I thought, man, that'd be a good tree to set in. But I wanted to be more aggressive and got aggressive, and I got too aggressive because he skirted where I was at, and I was hunting a just off wind. So my wind was blowing towards where I assumed that the bucks would be bedding, but I was using this eddy of the river and like this bend in the river to kind of suck my wind down in. So he thought that he was bulletproof, and he was, but I was tucked so close to the river while hunting him that he couldn't smell me. But had an opportunity with that deer, the bigger typical, couldn't capitalize, and then went in, because I was on a Saturday, I think. I went in the next day to try to kill him, had the same conditions, and could not capitalize either. And then that was the last encounter I had of him. Later on, I find out why, but at this point in time, I was thinking the mass buck was somewhere where he wasn't. So I was actually hunting a certain section of that property that I had permission that he just didn't really frequent very often. And I was putting all of my eggs into one basket thinking that that's where he was. And it turned out that the bigger typicals would stay there, but he never did. And then on October 31st, I think, Halloween.
Let me ask you this question real quick, because
go ahead.
So you got permission 2 weeks ago in the story. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
And you've only deployed one camera. Are you thinking like you need to put more cameras, or did you?
I did at that point in time.
Okay. I was just curious because how much the deer consumed you in 19, and maybe you just skimmed over or whatnot. But like, I'm just wondering if I got permission in this. I know you probably did the same thing, but what I would have done is like every camera I can get, like I just need intel. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I did pull a lot of cameras, and I was afraid because I had such limited access to timber and woods, I should say. Yeah. I was afraid to like dive super deep into it. So I really just put them all on the edge of fields, and like I found some scrapes and stuff, and that's what I targeted because I was hoping that I could get some night pictures of him out there and then know the direction he's coming from at least. So, but as the season progressed, I'm very aggressive. And I pulled all those cameras off the edge because a deer of that caliber, I should have known better. He's not going to be out in that field edge very often unless he's dogging a doe that's hot. And he was one of those deer that really didn't like the daylight in wide open areas, especially during season. So I wasn't getting pictures of him because I was hunting on a field, or excuse me, I had cameras on a field edge. And once I kind of thought about it, I'm like, man, I'm an idiot. I need to pull these cameras off these field edge scrapes and try to find a deep timber scrape. And I went in October 31st, and that's the encounter that you pulled up, and that was the smaller typical. This one right here. I'm sorry if you guys
smaller
can't see
typical. That's a big that's a big deer.
Yeah. So this was the smaller typical, and I had an encounter with him on the 31st, and hunting out of the saddle, he came in on my weak side, and I grunted him in. I did a blind grunting sequence about a half an hour before legal, and he came in all bristled up, ears pinned back, and I thought, oh man, I'm not passing this deer. Like, there's no way I'm passing up 160-inch typical. There's no way. So he's on my blind side, so I throw my tethered over my shoulder, spin in my little platform. Meanwhile, he's at 20 yards. It's so thick in that river bottom that he's trying to find that deer that was grunting, ear pinned back. And he walks through one of my openings, walks through another opening as I'm trying to spin, trying to get the camera on him. And finally, I made one big mistake with that deer. I gave him the old mat before I drew my bow because and looking back at it, it was absolutely stupid for me to do that. But he was going through my last shooting lane. And if he would have went any farther, I think he would have got my wind. And like any other mature deer, he was circling downwind and trying to figure out what made that grunt. So I knew that it was either now or he's going to bust me. And then once he would get my scent, man, I think it's game over personally on a big mature deer like that. Like, once they find out that it's you that's hunting them, it's a different game, you know? Mm-hmm. So I didn't want him to bust me. So I'm mad at him, and he stops. And in the video, he stops for like a minute, just staring, almost threw me. And another kind of quirky thing that I do is I don't hunt very high off the ground. And I don't know why. I'm not afraid of heights or anything, but I just, like 2 sticks and an aider, that's all I take to the woods. Mm-hmm. And I was maybe like 12 foot off the ground, kind of in like a Y of a tree. He's looking through me. He puts his head down, and I rip my bow back. He catches the movement of me ripping my bow back and just throws his head right towards my direction. And when I rip my bow back, my pin's like 2 feet above his back. And I'm just like, all right, I just got to bring this bow down slow. So I slowly start bringing my bow down, and he catches that movement, and he pins me in the tree. And I shoot a hinge style release, and I've got a click in it. So I get to my click. I am microseconds away from squeezing it off, and the deer blows at me at like 15 yards.
Oh my gosh.
And takes off running. And I have it all on video, and it is one of the most, I'll see if I can show it. It is one of the most unforgettable moments of my life. I don't know if you guys can see that or not.
Yep.
Oh yeah, he's gone. He picked you.
Yeah. he almost took off like he shot him.
Yeah.
So
what's that? Boom, gone.
Yep. When they adjust their head like that, they got you pegged.
He flipped you to the hoof. That's what he did.
Yeah. And the reason why these deer are so important is because once the mass buck moved in, they vanished. So those 2 opportunities that I had were the last opportunities that I had of those deer for the rest of the season period. I never got a picture of those deer again. The bigger typical, he might have caught some of my ground scent, but it wasn't close enough to where he was bedding for me to worry about it. The smaller typical busted me in the tree. Maybe me busting him caused it, but it was too much of a coincidence that once the mass buck moved in, I never got a picture of the I'm going to call it the 60s and the 70s class typical again. And I got a picture. Excuse me, I bumped the camera. I got a picture of the deer late October. And finally, all that hard work, he's finally on my property that I can hunt.
What day was it? Do you remember what day you got the first picture of him?
Yeah, I can tell you. I can pull it up real quick.
So but after these encounters, you didn't know if he was there, right?
No, I mean, I never got a picture of him. And I knew from prior, it was the 28th of October. I knew from the prior year, I seen him out in that field. So I knew, but this was late October, early November. So I knew that he rutted there at least for a couple days. And I didn't know how long or when, but I knew he was there. So, but up until that point, you're correct. I did not know if he was even alive. He could have got hit by a car. Coyotes could have got him. Another hunter could have killed him.
Yep.
So I was not going to pass up those other deer. I mean, I don't know too many guys that pass up a high 50s, low 60s, or a high 60s, low 70s class deer. So
there's two, yeah. Mark Drury and Lee Lakoski. That's about the only ones ever.
Maybe, yeah. But your average dudes like ourselves, like there's no way we're passing that deer up. And so I was pretty disappointed in myself for not capitalizing, because I'm a firm believer in you don't get many opportunities. And so yeah, the 28th of October, the deer shows up. I get a picture of him looking at a camera, just big old chest. And
is that the daylight picture?
Is that the daylight one?
That's this one.
Yeah,
right? That's it right there.
That's my favorite.
He looks real good.
Yeah, blind in one eye. You can see it's all clouded over, like big old muscular chest, big deep chest.
It's Mike Tyson is what it is, really.
For real, like that. And on hoof, that deer was, I don't even want to guess. He would have been the biggest racked deer and bodied deer that I've ever shot. And he was huge. So let's get into the first encounter, unless you guys have anything else you want to.
No, so you get that picture of him and you're thinking like, okay, I gotta put the pedal to the metal here, probably, right? Like
game's on. Yeah, game's on.
Okay, so get us into the first encounter. When did this happen?
So my work schedule is pretty I guess how do I want to word it? I have the opportunity. Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, I have the opportunity to take off whenever I want.
Okay.
As long as I give a couple days notice. So I didn't have to put in, and what I'm getting at is I didn't have to put in for like the first week of November or the second week of November months ago. I could go into work and give them a couple days notice and say, hey, I'm going to take off the first week of November, or whatever. So as soon as I got a picture of him, I told work, yeah, first week of November, I'm out. So get a picture of him on the 28th. Tell work I'm out the first week of November, and hunt him hard. That year, I don't know what it was like in Michigan for you guys, but we had a terrible warm front come through. And me being me, I didn't look at the weather before I told my boss. I just was focusing on that picture. And the first couple of days of November were really cold. And then like the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th were just 80 degrees. So luckily I was able to go back to work and then use the following vacation in the second week of November. So on November 13th of 20 is when I had my first encounter with him. And he's actually coming in from the direction of where those smaller typicals bedded. So he's dogging some does, and I see a couple bucks out in the distance working this river bottom. They'd always cruise up and down it searching for does. I see a bunch of small bucks, and all of a sudden, and once again, I'm 12 foot off the ground like always. All of a sudden, these does and these fawns come out of nowhere, like Mach 12, and they end up at the base of my tree. And of course, I knew something was up. It's November 13th. And I look 60 yards behind him, and here he comes. And he's grunting the whole way in, and he's giving those deep, you guys ever hear that deep buck roar?
Yep.
He's giving that the whole time he's coming in. Well, them fawns, it was a doe and 2 fawns. The fawns had no clue I was there. Well, mom just pegs me out of the tree.
Oh.
I'm thinking to myself, like, please do not blow or do not do anything. Well, he is so he's so on them that she kind of loses focus on me and kind of takes off. Well, this is where one of the giant mistakes happens. So I'm hunting the 30 acres of timber that I'm allowed to be on. The property that he's coming from, I don't have permission to shoot on or be on. I'm hunting probably 15 yards from the property line. And I know that that was probably a mistake because I was hunting so close, but the way the terrain features kind of worked in that river bottom, I had to get that tight to the property line in order for the terrain and my thermals and my wind to work. So I told myself from the beginning that if that deer was over the property line, I probably would not shoot him because that's just how I am. So, but there was a major crossing 10 yards from where I was that they crossed this old abandoned, like fence, pasture fence. It's not pasture fence, but old property fence, property line fence. And those does in that fawn did exactly that. They came right over 10 yards from me. I'm thinking, okay, sweet. Here he comes. So he hops this big log, and I'm watching his giant frame come in, and he's just brah, 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 brah the whole time, grunting, roaring. And my heart's just a pumping. And like, I'm getting nervous, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to kill this sucker. And he comes in to like 22 yards, stops, and I'm like, I could kill him right there. But he's over the property line. I'm like, okay, don't kill him, Matt. Like, do the right thing. So he comes in a couple more steps, and all of a sudden he veers off like he's going to circle and corral those does back into a spot where he wanted them to go. And he's staying just off the property line. So he stops at 22 yards, could have shot him broadside, had my bow in my hand, but I decided to pass him because he was about 3 or 4 yards over the property line.
You did the right move. I would have done the same thing. Honestly, there's guys listening to this right now that'd be like, fuck, you would have. No, I am by the book. I would have done the same thing, man.
Yeah. So
you always, in those situations, you have to ask yourself, would you want someone to do that to you?
100%.
You know what I mean? And when you start playing that question through your head, it makes, you're going to do the right thing when you ask yourself that. But that's good on you, dude, because I think there's a lot of guys out there that story might have ended right then.
Oh God. Yeah. It would have. Yeah.
So I got a lot of flack.
He's top pin club right there.
Oh yeah.
Pin. All day he's top pin club.
He's top pin club all day.
I got a lot of flack from my buddies, not my really close friends because they understood, but like a lot of guys were like, man, you're a bigger man than me because I would have shot that deer. And the whole time I'm thinking like, should I have shot him? Should I have walked him? Like, what will you do? And ultimately I passed him. So, I mean, that's the decision I made in the moment of truth. I decided not to shoot him, but I don't think that there's a day that goes by where I question that thought process. But I also think I'm also proud that I didn't shoot him. Not to sound like cliche or, pat myself on the back, but I feel like I matured a lot as a hunter. And at that time, like I'm only 27. So at that time, I was, 25 years old, 24 years old. So, I mean, I'm proud of myself for not making that decision at such a young age. And, yeah. So he ended up working and chasing them does in front of me all night out at 60 yards, but it was so thick in that river bottom, I could never get a shot. I grunted at him. I bleated at him. I threw everything I had at him. He'd look my direction and he wouldn't do a thing. And the most fun I've ever had watching a mature buck, the way he worked those does and the way he worked off little bucks, just roaring and grunting and just, I mean, like something that you'd read about in a book from Iowa or something. Like to this day, I've never had that happen to me. And I'm just thankful for the opportunity because I sat back in my saddle and just watched him with binos and tried to keep my camera on when I could. And the whole time I was just in awe, just watching this deer. So
outside of putting an arrow in them that day, that's the type of encounters we live for, something like that. And how you're describing it, it almost sounds, like a bull elk. You ever seen out in the videos of them in the rut where, all the herd of cows will try to go one way and they shift them a different way. And, I think a lot of those most mature bucks, like he probably breeds in the same little pocket every year of his life, and he forces those does in there. That's probably a little bit what he was actually trying to do that day.
Yep. So yeah, and then the other mistake, I made two mistakes that night. So there was two trees that my wind was good for and the thermals were good for, and I chose the tree that I sat in, of course. And after he got done pushing that doe, I don't know if she was really hot because he didn't breed her and then he left her. So I was a little bit confused because he was very, very interested for like an hour of just back and forth. So I don't know if he bred her without me knowing or not seeing it because it's so thick. I'm not sure what happened, but eventually he works off and he walks by 10 yards from the other tree that I was in my head. I had this internal battle of which tree do I sit in, and I chose the wrong tree. And if I would have chose the other tree, 10-yard shot. 10-yard shot.
And you have to be thinking at that point in your head that you just did the right thing. So karma's going to play in your favor, right? But then the son of a bitch walks by the other freaking tree that you thought about setting up that night.
Yeah. Going off of your point, the whole time I kept telling myself, like, "Oh, the good Lord will reward me for that one."
Yeah.
And the whole time I thought, man, I'm like you said, karma's gonna come around. Like you did the right thing.
Yeah.
But that's not how life works sometimes. So
yeah.
So that was that encounter. Nothing too crazy. The next one's a little bit more juicy, other than passing him at 22 yards because he was over the property line. So that was on the 13th. So on the 15th, we had this crazy windstorm. I'm talking 40, 50, 60 mile an hour gust. And I elected not to hunt and just stay home with my wife. And like we were talking earlier, I littered the place with cameras, of course, and all of a sudden, let me check my phone. At like 1 o'clock, I get a picture, ping, to my phone. He's going in to that river bottom where I had the encounter with him on the 13th. And the way the terrain feature works, it's a river bottom, like all the ags up top, and it drops down into this river bottom. And I knew he was going in there because of the wind. And he was just wanting to bed up and getting out of the wind. So I jump off the couch and I'm immediately throwing on my gear. I'm heading to the woods. And my wife looks at me and she goes, "What are you doing?" And like our house is like ready to blow over. Like, and I'm telling her, "I'm going to the woods." And she goes, "No, you're not. You're not going to the woods." And I said, "I'm going to the woods." I said, "The mass buck is in my timber where I can hunt." I said, "I'm going." And we fought for probably 20 minutes. And finally she agreed that I could go as long as I didn't set up near any dead snags. So in my mind, I thought, okay, that's smart. Like, I just won't get into a tree or hunt next to anything that was dead. Because in reality, like, I don't want to make it sound like a drama, but in reality, the wind was so rough that, and I'll get into it here in a minute, that it probably wasn't the greatest. It probably wasn't the smartest idea for me to be in the woods with wind that high. So here's the picture. I have a picture of me walking by a cell camera. Here's me going in at 2:30. So I'm going in at 2:30 and wind's just a whipping. And I go down to the exact same spot where I encountered him on the 13th. And I was actually going to get into a tree that was another 10 yards past it. And I get down in the bottom, and this whole process takes a long time because I'm creeping. But I have the wind whipping so much that I can get away with a lot of movement and a lot of sound. I get like 10 yards. I'm almost at the tree that I encountered him on the 13th. And I get 10 yards from where I want to be, and I jump, 4 or 5 does. And they're bedded only 15 yards from me. And what happened was I was walking down, and the whole time I'm looking and I'm thinking, well, there's a dead snag. There's a dead snag. I'm like, there's a dead snag. And I'm like, man, I really promised my wife that I wouldn't hunt over anything that was a dead snag. And then, not to make the story sound anything more than it actually was, but this is the truth. The minute I said that in my head, a tree fell over like 100 yards from me, and I heard it crash and fall. And I'm thinking, man, this is getting rough. Like, wind's whipping really, really bad. And maybe I should listen to my wife. Maybe I'm being an idiot. So I decide there's one tree that I'm kind of standing in front of, and I'm just like, well, if I only hang the platform like 3 or 4 foot and like don't really hook in, I can just kind of jump out of the platform if this tree goes. And what happened was I took my my backpack off, and that movement or something, the doe caught that movement and she busted me and took off. I didn't even know they were there because it's so thick in that river bottom. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, okay, does were bedded, what to do. And I kind of just took my backpack off, set it at the base of the tree. I'm binoing in front of me, trying to look. And all of a sudden, I look over to where those does were, and the mass buck is standing at like 40 yards. Mm-hmm. And what happened was, at least this is my thought process. If you guys have an opinion, please. My thought process now, looking back at it, is those does bumped. They never blew. They didn't know what I was. They took off, and he thought, that maybe a buck bumped them, or, he wanted to check out what they were. So he comes in, he's at like 40 yards. And, I wanted to get this on camera so bad, but I said, screw it at that point in time. So he's kind of downwind a little bit of where they were, but not enough where he's catching my scent. And my scent's kind of paralleling the river. My scent's running from where the ridge comes down and meets the river bottom. My scent is running completely down the ridge bottom. So he goes downwind of them does and gets broadside at like 40 some yards. I said, all right, son, your time's up. I drew my bow back, settled my pin, and I'm not exaggerating. A gust of wind pushed my bow off of the deer onto his rear end. So I settle back in behind the shoulder, and he's still kind of just sniffing around, not doing much. And I'm like, all right, son, your time's up. And a gust of wind hit me, and now I'm off on his rack. Oh so I finally said to myself, there's no way I want to be as ethical as possible. And I'm like, there's no way I could shoot this thing unless I get closer. So I let my bow down, and I'm just thinking, man, I can't do that. I got to shoot this deer. So I rip my bow back again, and I'm aiming at him, and I'm just about ready to squeeze it, and another wind gust gets me. And I wish I could say that I could have shot him, but honestly, I just, something about it, I just wasn't comfortable. I let down, and I told myself, like, man, I got to get closer. Well, he kind of turned, started going towards them does. So all of a sudden, I got the whole Zach Farrenball vibe, and I was like, I'm going to go after this thing on foot. So I decided that I was going to go track this thing down because the wind was so heavy. There's no way that this deer was going to be able to hear me. So I closed probably 20, 25 yards on him, but he's walking through so much thick stuff that I can't get a shot. And he goes into a thick briar patch, tall weeds and nastiness, that I just lost him. The same direction he went for the does. So I kind of just sat behind a stump, but I put the stump behind me so I wouldn't be silhouetted. And I had my bow in my hand, and I'm on my knees, and I'm just like, once he comes out of that thick stuff, he's dead. Well, 10 minutes, 15 minutes goes by, and I don't see the deer. I don't see the does. I'm thinking, man, where did he go? All of a sudden, I get this gut feeling to look over my shoulder. And remember, I had the stump in between me and, about what's behind me. So I kind of peek over this stump. Old boy's standing at 15 yards. Oh. And if I would have stayed where I originally bumped those does, I would have shot him at, 20 yards. No, and old boy's standing behind me. He gets my wind. He blows, and just blows one time and takes off. I stand up, and I'm watching him run down this river bottom. He stops, and I'm getting mad just thinking about this. The sorry sucker stops at like 90 yards and turns and looks at me. And I'm standing right above that stump, binos on my face. looking at him. And I swear we made this weird eye connection of just like he told me that he's the boss and I'm telling him I'm coming after you, because like it was one of those moments that just I'll never forget. He got me, you know, and then that's all there was. I got too aggressive. I was on the ground. He busted me at 15 yards. I got a 184-inch deer at 15 yards just staring at me. Wind kind of swirled and he got me. He took off. You know, to be honest, I was probably lucky that I got as far as I did with how the wind was, you know, whipping and whirling. And I'm not sure. I'm just imagining because it was so strong that it was so consistent. But there was some swirls, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna get busted down in here. But
that's like the kind of encounters that you look back on and you just gotta shake your head. Like, what's the chances? You know what I mean?
Oh, I know it. Here's the picture. I always like showing this. I got a picture of me coming out. So this is me coming out defeated.
Yo, sure. Head hanging, you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Head hanging. So I got a picture of me going in and I got a picture of me coming out.
Now were those two encounters, I mean, you're talking about the 13th and like the 15th. Are those back-to-back hunts for you in there?
Yeah. So those were back-to-back hunts.
So you almost have to be thinking, you know, back-to-back hunts, you encountered him twice, like, okay, like you are in his wheelhouse at that point.
100%. I knew that he loved that river bottom, and I knew that he was using it, and I knew that if I had to kill him, that it would be in that river bottom. But
yeah,
what I learned is, you know, I talked about this a little bit earlier on the podcast. I feel like once they get your scent and they know that you're hunting them, I think it's a different animal. I really do. Like ground scent and stuff. Like I don't know, especially where I hunt. I just feel like there's way too much human activity and way too much scent in the air in general for a deer to, like, for guys, it's unrealistic for a guy to say, oh, if you bump him, he'll go a country mile. Don't bump him. That's not realistic where I hunt, because if that deer would go a mile every time he got bumped, he would never stop moving. You know, like it's too populated. There's too many hunters. It's just not realistic.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm getting at is he got my scent, and it really changed the game. Like he knew that every time he got my ground scent, every time he smelled a new camera I put up, he knew that it was me, and it just made it that much harder for me to hunt that deer. So, that's not the last encounter.
Oh God.
the next one.
I don't mean to laugh. I'm not laughing at you at all. This is just
no.
It's like I go back to the beginning of the podcast when I said this deer's an anomaly. And there's a parallel with all these deer that we've talked about. Some of these deer are just not meant to be killed by humans.
Oh,
or
100%.
You know, or by the human we're talking to, obviously, because that's the premise of the show.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's weird how sometimes, you know, I don't want to say that I deserved that deer by all means, but I feel like I worked the hardest for him, and definitely didn't capitalize.
Yeah. So before we get into encounter number 3, you look back at encounter number 1 and you feel pretty good about it. You know, you made the right decision, didn't really blow him out of the area. After the encounter 1, like, you still feel you're in the chips. The next hunt, you have an encounter with him, but this time you're walking out of the woods feeling a little bit different, because now he knows you're there for sure.
Yep. He knows I'm there. He knows who I am, and he's got my smell. He's got my scent. So after that encounter, his daytime activity on cameras and his travel route to get through that river bottom changed. So it took me a little bit of time to move cameras to figure out how he was now moving. So he actually, where I was at was probably 400 or 500 yards, maybe 600 yards from where he really was staying. And I didn't figure that out until later on in the year. And so I just kept working the direction that he would always come from. And I finally got pictures of him again. Oh, not very far or not very long since the 15th. Like, let's just say late October. I get pictures of him again. And I threw some cameras up. And
late October or late November?
I meant November if I said October.
November. Okay. Yep.
So late November, I threw some cameras up, and within 3 or 4 days, I got 3 or 4 pictures of him. A couple times at night, a couple times during the daylight. A lot of them were right at last light, right at like first morning light, stuff like that. So there's a group of guys that I kind of hunt with, and I messaged all of them, and they all knew I was hunting the deer. And I said, what do I do? Well, this is the other big mistake that I made. He was going back to his bed, and he bedded in this CRP field, but on a map or on a topo or on Onyx, you can't tell that it's CRP without walking it. It's just this little, like, I'm going to say it's not even 2 acres. It's maybe not even an acre big of just CRP. That's like, I don't know what it was. It's in the middle of the woods. All the trees are cut out, but it's on the neighbor. And I didn't learn this until after the fact of doing some shed hunting, but he always came from that direction. And I thought he was working the river bottom. I thought he was bedding in the river bottom somewhere. And so I moved those cameras, got pictures of him, talked to my buddy. He said, go in there and hunt the deer. I should have hunted him in the evening, but me being an idiot, I went in there in the morning because he was daylighting in the morning on this one pinch as well. So he was coming back that direction every morning at right before legal. So I went 100 yards past my camera thinking, okay, if he's at my camera just before legal, by the time he gets to me 100 yards past it, I should be able to kill him during legal light. Well, I'm walking in, and I decided to get into the woods, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours before legal. And maybe not, I'm exaggerating, probably an hour to an hour and a half before legal. And I'm 15 yards from where I want to be in the base of my tree, going in really, really quiet, one step at a time, like not making a lot of noise. I didn't turn my light on, and I don't think white light scares deer, but at this point in time, I didn't want to give him any kind of knowledge that I was in there. But I finally get to where I want to be, and I've never hunted that area before. I didn't have a tree picked out. I was only going off of a map, and I had an idea from setting trail cameras, but like until you actually climb a tree, it's totally different than just picking one out. So I turned my light on. I had a headlamp on. Boom, turned my light on, and I just shine up into a tree to make sure it's the one I want to get in. And as I'm coming down the tree, there's a deadfall at the bottom of it. And that's why I knew it was that tree. Well, here stands a 150-inch deer that I've never seen before, and I've never got a camera picture of him. He just stands up, and this is an hour before daylight, or hour before legal. And I immediately shut my light off, and I just freeze, and I'm like, well, I'm going to shoot this deer if I have the opportunity. Granted, I'm not going to do it illegally.
I'm going to wait an hour and a half until it gets
exactly.
Just lay back down for a little bit, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what my thought was. I'm like, man, if he just beds down, like, and if it gets legal, like, I'm going to shoot this thing. And he's within range. I mean, he's probably 30 yards, or no, what did I say? 15, 20 yards from me. And so I shut my light off, take my backpack off like as slow as I can. It probably took 5 minutes to get my backpack off. I set it down real slow. I pick my bow up. I don't knock an arrow, but I just pick my bow up and kind of rest it on my leg. And I lean up against a tree. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm just going to wait this sucker out. It just starts getting to the point where you can start seeing shapes in the woods with my naked eye. Maybe 10 minutes before legal, I'm just now starting to see shapes, and I see him bedded there. He actually bedded back down. And I'm thinking, man, this might work. So I think the same time that I started to see him, he started to see me. And he never blew or anything, but he stands up and he looks at me, and I'm a statue leaning up against a tree, kind of like trying to hide behind it. And he looks at me, never blows, but just knew something was up and stood up and just walked away. And at this point in time, it's darn near legal. Wouldn't you know it? As I'm out there with, caught with my pants down, here comes old Mr. Massey, and my camera dings. So I get a notification on my phone that he's 100 yards from me, and the camera just went off. So I'm panicking, and I'm like, well, I can't climb a tree because he'll hear me or he'll see me. He's coming right at me. So I hunkered behind a tree, and I don't know where he went, but I never saw him. I never seen him. I don't know if he saw me or smelt me or what. I don't think he would have smelt me because my wind was right. But yeah. So walking in the dark, stumble across another good deer that I would have shot. And at this point in time, you guys are probably thinking that I'm the worst hunter in the world.
No.
And all the listeners are probably thinking the same thing. Like,
no.
This Matt Williams guy has no clue what he's doing.
What I'm thinking is just, how do I get the rabbit's foot that is lodged straight in your keister to,
Right.
To have the encounters that you're having? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If you want to see big deer, come hang out with me. If you want to shoot them, don't
hang out too long.
No, you'll get the bad curse.
Yeah.
But
so was that the last time in 2020 that you seen him?
Yep. So that was the last encounter in 2020, and I think I boogered him for the very last time, and he finally just couldn't take it anymore. And I think that I think one too many bumps, and he. What do? Like, you got a limited time to work with it. You've only got 30 acres. I tried to be aggressive, and I just couldn't get it done. So, but it is what it is.
Just to have the 3 encounters in that short little period that you did. I mean, a lot of times we always just ask for that one opportunity every year. You know what I mean? And that 3 encounters in basically 2 to 3 week window. I mean, it's tough to beat.
Yeah. It's sickening on my end because, looking back at it, even telling the story, I should have capitalized. And I think now, with what I've learned from that deer, I think that he's bettered me as a hunter. And I think that, if I had that same opportunity on a deer like that, I think I would know what to do. But like I said earlier in the podcast, I'm happy that I had the opportunity to hunt that deer. He taught me so much. And, looking back at it, I made a lot of mistakes, but you learn best from your mistakes. If I would have killed that deer, I wouldn't have learned anything,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
but, so no more trail cam pictures or nothing then?
No, I got trail cam pictures. Like the one that you showed was a late season picture. So what happened was, after that encounter, I would get trail cam pictures of them, but it was always at night. And then in Ohio, you can bait. And so after gun season, I didn't get any pictures of him. During gun season, I didn't get any pictures of him really after that encounter. A couple times at night, I put out a couple bags of corn, kind of close to where I had an encounter with him the first time, November 13th. And I put it in a spot where it was like there was no way I could hunt over it. It was more close to the field. I just wanted an inventory if he was still alive.
Right.
And I got pictures of him on that bait site, but it was always at midnight, 1 o'clock. And he would show up. I kept corn there just because I was hoping that I could keep him in the area. I wasn't sure how long he rutted on me. So I wanted to see maybe I could pull him late season. And I'm not real big over hunting over bait. I think it's honestly harder to kill a mature deer over bait unless they're raised on it. So unless they're a button buck of that year and they're raised on corn, I think that it's a lot harder to kill a mature buck when you just randomly dump a bag of corn in the woods. I mean, they know what it is. He's been around the block. He knows what that is. So all I was doing was I put it in a weird spot where I knew, like, I'm not going to hunt this spot. I just want to know if he's alive. He found it. And then during the year, he'd show up like once a week, twice a week on that bait site. And then it would be once or twice a month. And then it would be, nothing. So he ventured back to his winter range, and I didn't have access to be there. So after 3 encounters within, basically the month of late October to, basically December, I had those three encounters and didn't capitalize on any of them. So, but
I don't even really, like that first encounter definitely checks the encounter box, but to me, Matt, that there was no mistake on the first encounter. Like you did the right thing there.
Oh, you did what you had to do. It just,
Yep.
The good Lord said it wasn't your time, really.
Yep.
Yeah, for real. He said this one's not for you. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
But and then it's funny because not even funny, but a trend that I see with a lot of these stories of people that are fortunate enough to chase these age class or even antler size caliber of deer where these stories don't always end in the right way, but I truly believe down the road what they've taught you will pay off bigger than just that one particular animal, in my opinion.
Yep, and I agree 100%.
So end of 2020, coming into 21 now, I mean, you're starting to shed hunt, I'm guessing. Do you still have permission on the big ground, the big property?
So I have permission to be on the big property, and I also gained another like 70 acres of the big property. Just I had permission to shed hunted it like crazy, and then I did some work in the off season for the farmer. There was because of that windstorm, there was a bunch of deadfall in the edge of his fields. So once it hardened up, I asked him if he'd care if I went around with a chainsaw and a four-wheeler and just cleaned up his field edges. So I spent like a whole weekend just driving my four-wheeler up and down field edges, cutting down all those deadfalls that were laying in his field and then chucking them into the woods. So I think that kind of helped gain a little bit more property the following year. And the biggest takeaway from shed hunting was I found where he was bedding. Because I didn't have access to walk the neighbors during hunting season. I didn't. And I always knew that he was coming from that direction, but I didn't know why. And I kind of thought he was bedding somewhere where he wasn't. But when I shed hunted it, I had permission to shed hunt, and I found that little CRP nook that I was talking about. And then all of a sudden, like the light bulb went out. I'm like, oh, that's where this whole time. He's right there.
Sure.
So that next year, had permission. I probably put 10 cameras in a little 10-acre section of where I could be. And I was just waiting. Sooner or later, he'll show up. Season rolls around, and I'm like, mid-October to late October, he's going to show up, and I'm just going to be waiting for him. At that point in time, his sheds were picked up, but I didn't know at that time that his sheds were picked up because everybody that was hunting him was keeping everything real hush-hush. And they went 184, like I said earlier. But I didn't know. I didn't even know if they were still alive. I seen them in the summer, but what can happen with a wild animal. So I'm just banking on pictures and on let me pull up the picture. On the 22nd of October, I get a picture of him on that piece that I'm allowed to be on. And he's cleaned up quite a bit. I know it's him because he's got the blind eye, but now he's 176-inch 9-point. So he's
that's no big deal.
Yeah,
no big deal.
So like here's him working a scrape, but he's every bit of 176-inch 9-point.
That's how I would have got him mounted right there too.
Oh, I dreamed about how I was going to mount that thing.
Sure.
So this is kind of another kicker to the story. As soon as I get a picture of him, I hunt him hard. But I never got another picture of him after that day. And I hunted really, really hard. No encounters, no nothing. And I'm thinking, man, what happened? So that was on the 16th. Or no, sorry. What did I say? The 22nd. Hunted him for the next couple of days. And then on the 26th of October, I get a random Snapchat from just some random dude that I know that he knows that I hunt and vice versa, but like we're not best friends or anything. He has no idea I'm hunting the deer. And he sends me a picture of the cap.
No.
I swear. He sends me a picture of the cap of that deer laying on a chair, and the caption says, "Time to score this beast." So immediately, I'm at work. I drop everything I'm doing.
Wait a second. So you know this guy is just like an acquaintance? Like you're not even like a buddy?
No.
Obviously he didn't know you were hunting this deer. Like he didn't send it to you like maliciously, right? Like, hey, gotcha.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. He had no idea.
Dick move if he did. Dick move.
There's no mistake in that left G2 either.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, he had no idea that I was hunting the deer, and I'm pretty careful with who I tell what deer I hunt and when, because I've been burned a couple times in my life over big deer. So like I'm very cautious with who I tell, and I won't post anything about deer until they're dead, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he just randomly sends me this Snapchat, and I'm freaking out. I call him, he won't answer. I'm like ready to puke, and actually I lied to you guys. I remember exactly what I was driving to a job site. I was on the road, and I you guys are probably gonna think that I'm fluffing the story, but I actually pulled off the side of the road and threw up. I'm not even joking. I pulled over on the side of the road and threw up because for the last 3 years of my life, like I've invested so much time into this deer that like I thought that this was my year, and I thought I'd kill him. I threw up. He finally called me back, and I said, who, like, what's going on? How do you, and he's like, what's the big deal? He's like, it's just a big deer. And I'm like, no, I was hunting that deer. He goes, no, you weren't. And he said, nobody was allowed to hunt this deer. And I said, no, I was hunting that deer. And then I sent him a trail cam picture of the deer, and I said, here's proof. And he gives me the number to the guy that killed him.
Oh, and so he didn't kill him. This guy, is he like a
a
scorer or something like that?
The dude works with the guy that killed him. And the guy that killed him just brought in the skull cap to show everybody at work. And the guy that sent me the Snapchat was just, check out this giant that my buddy from work killed.
Sure.
And it happened to be my deer. I would have never known that this deer was dead unless I got that Snapchat, because the guy that killed him has like no social media, no nothing. He has a Facebook, but I wasn't friends with him. He's an older gentleman. Like, like I would have never known that deer was dead. So by the grace of God, I get that Snapchat just out of the blue. And finally, I get his number. I call the dude and I explained to him, hey, this is weird, but I want to see that deer. And he was him-hawing around about it. And finally I told him, like, no, you don't understand. I have 3 years of history with that deer. I want to put my hands on that deer. Turns out, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole because I don't want to put any negativity on this gentleman, but he got a picture of that deer the night after I got a picture of him on a bait site about 1.5 miles away. One random picture of that deer on a bait site at night with a couple does. He took that picture into work and was like, holy cow, look at what I got on camera. And the guy that sent me the Snapchat said, go in there tomorrow and hunt that deer. And he's like, well, I don't know if I want to hunt him. It was at night, who knows? He goes, no, go in there and hunt that deer. You never know what will happen. I'm talking to this guy that killed him, the actual hunter that killed him. He has no idea what wind direction it was. He has no idea what time he went in. He has no idea nothing. I was asking him all these questions. He said so he gets a picture the night before. The next day he goes in the morning to hunt this deer and kills him over a bait pile. So he was chasing does is what the guy told me. So my thought process was one monarch doe came in a little early or maybe at a false cycle, and he was on her because he was the most mature, the most dominant buck in the area. And those does were feeding on his corn pile, and he got shot at 15 yards by a guy holding a crossbow on a ladder stand. And the biggest deer that he had on camera, other than the one that he killed, was a 120-inch 8-point. He was going in there. He was putting corn out for a 120-inch 8-point. And that's mic drop, boom. That's the story of the mass buck.
Wow.
So
I feel for you, dude. I do.
So that's
trust me. I'd be lying to you if I'm not even gonna get into it because
I know where that's going.
I can't do that. I won't. No, dude, that sucks. No, yeah. We're not gonna. We can get into it off record. That sucks though, man.
Yep. So he went 176. He went 176 inches as a 9-point, and
that picture doesn't even give him justice right there.
No, like pictures don't do him justice. Here, I'll show you the mass. Here's the mass.
Yeah, and the listeners have to remember, he's 176 as a 9-point, and that's the smallest Matt had ever seen him. Think of that.
Correct.
Think of that.
Yep. So he was going downhill. and he got shot by chasing some tail. And you know, and I'm gonna dive into this story a little bit more, but I got to be careful with what I say because I don't want to slam the hunter. And you know, I doubt he's the type of guy that I doubt he'd be listening to any kind of podcast in general. But he has been. I hate saying this because maybe he did it legally. He has been busted for poaching before. So the guy that killed him, he showed me the trail cam picture, and he had the trail cam picture. I could not deny that, but there's just I wanna be happy for him, and I wanna say like, hey, everything that you did was legal, and like I'm so happy for you, and like, but when I went over to his house and didn't know who the dude was, and he was nice enough to let me come over and look at the deer, the first thing he tells me was, "Oh, I'm sure you've heard the rumors about me." And I didn't know who he was. And I said, no. And he goes, "I just want to let you know I killed this deer legally." That was the first thing he tells me. So I'm thinking in my head, like, all right, there's a red flag, but he had a story that matched up. And, you know, every once in a while he'll call me and, you know, because he knows that I'm in the area and all, you know, chasing deer all the time. And, but, you know, like I said, I don't want to bring the story down. I really hope that he killed that deer legally because that deer deserved to be killed legally, but we don't know. And I don't know, and I don't know what to say about it. And it's frustrating because I got a picture of him the night before. And I know, like we were talking about earlier, deer travel miles in a blink of an eye, but it's just fishy that the night before I got a picture of him, and the following night he gets a picture of him almost, you know, let's just say a couple miles. And then he kills him the next day, dogging some does over a bait pile. Yeah. And the dude doesn't even know which direction the wind was. Like I asked him, I said, "What was the wind doing that day?" No clue. He said, "No matter what the wind was doing, I was getting to that tree stand." I'm like, man, go figure, you know?
Matt, you know what is one of the most infuriating things for me as well is like, you know, I know some old boys that have killed some damn good deer with a bow in the past or whenever. I'm very close to one of them. And when I talked to them about it, they never played to win. They never, not one, you know, and they were hunting like one stand. Like they're riding the hole in one stand, you know, and it's just like they just go to that stand no matter what. Like that's just where they hunt. That's their spot. And I'm telling you, they're killing good deer. And it just makes me wonder, like, some days it's like, man, are we putting too much thought into this? Or like, are we, you know, like the thermal hubs and the secondary ridges and how the wind's coming over this saddle and how it's getting fed back down into the bowl and stuff like that. Like, dude, I've hunted the ground that you've hunted, not the same ground, but like very close to where you're hunting. And like, it's just crazy. There is a science to it, but it's just one of those things that's like sometimes it's just like just go to the woods and it's just like getting lucky. You know what I mean? Yep. And that's what's infuriating to me because I think all three of us sitting on this call and a lot of people listen to this podcast are the diehards of like we get off by the science part of it, the figuring it out, the checkmate, the I figured you out on your home turf. Like that's what we get off on, you know, and it's very hard to be like, congratulations, buddy, for a guy that just goes in and does that over. And I'm not condoning bait. I used to bait hunt. We used to be able to bait hunt here. I've killed deer over bait. I don't condone it. Not saying I'll, you know, would ever do it again or what, you know, if it was legal. But what I'm saying is like, good on you. But like, you know, the fucking guy probably killed him in blue jeans. You know what I mean? And it's like, damn it, you know, damn it. Like what the hell? You know, it's infuriating. It really is.
He shows me a picture of that. And I'm not knocking anybody that kills 120 inch 8 point. And plus it's regional. Like I know that where you guys hunt like a 120 is a good deer. And like I'm just fortunate enough to live in an area where a 120 is a 2.5-year-old or a 3.5-year-old, and they're a dime a dozen. So it frustrated me the most when he pulled out a picture on his flip phone and was like, "This is the deer I was going in after," and it was a 120-inch 8-point. I'm like, that just irked me. You know, like I didn't killing the deer. I was mad, but I was happy for him. But when he showed me like, this is what I was hunting, this was the biggest deer I had on camera, that's where it got to me. Like, man, I put in all this work, all this effort, all this time, spend basically my adult life trying to pattern, figure out mature whitetails, and then some random dude throws out a bag of corn and kills a deer that I haven't been able to kill in 3 years, you know? Like that's what got to me. Like that made me feel like this big, you know.
I mean, we go through it here in Michigan with guns. We can hunt with rifles here, you know, and I don't want to get too much into the story, but there's a big deer in a section that a lot of people know about, and you know, the older gentleman that goes in and doesn't hunt all year and catches wind of it and goes in there and tries to kill him, and it's just like, you know, like, come on, you know, like it's just there's just more to hunting and more to this than that. Then I gotta be careful what I say. So
I know I'm the same way. Just bite the tongue.
Yeah,
you know?
Dude,
whatever
but
gets
like
you in the outdoors.
Like exactly, you said it right there. Like whatever gets you outside and just to do, you know, and be around these creatures, I'm all for it. You know, whatever you got to do. I'll go home and cry in a beer if I guess it's my problem, not yours. I guess, you know. But dude, that's a crazy story. And like I said, like I'm glad I say it every week on these. I'm glad I didn't know everything about that, because the 150 that stood up when you were walking in, that's a nuance of like, Jesus, like that's crazy. And then,
dude, my timing is just impeccable. Like I swear, you know, like,
well,
crazy.
It happens.
And good on you for not trying to kill him over the line. You know, I know 9 out of 10 guys right now, I could name the names that would have killed that deer.
Yep.
You know, good on you.
Yep.
But
and
the thing
also,
is what's going to happen is like this year, next year, you're just going to kill 200 because of the karma that you've built up over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
You would think so, but maybe this would be a story for another day. Real quick, I know that we're real deep into this anyways, but I got on, so I actually lost that property, and I'll touch base on that kind of real quick. An outfitter kind of caught wind of the deer that were in the area and leased it all up. So now an outfitter can hunt, or has leased the whole property, and they are terrible. I'm not bashing the landowner or I'm not bashing the outfitter, but they have no age restrictions and no antler restriction. So I think 17 bucks have been taken off that farm this year, ranging anywhere from like 80 inches to like 150. So there goes your buck crop for another 3 or 4 years. So that farm, that whole area is ruined. I actually got a piece that's kind of close to it, not super close, but once I found out that I lost it, I scrambled, and of course I found out, you know, late August, of course. So I'm trying to scramble to find another property, and I found something close to it, but the deer just aren't there. So, and then but what I was getting at is I got lucky and landed another property, random property, and found a 208. And first 200 that I've legitimately had the opportunity to hunt. I've gotten a couple pictures of random deer that would probably score close to it, but this is 100% 208 because the neighbor killed him. And I honestly, it's a pretty good story. If you ever get bored and just want some filler content, the guy that killed him slept in his blind for 10 days and killed him on October 15th while I was in Indiana hunting public. So on opening weekend in Ohio, he slept in his blind for 4 days straight. And then from opening day of Ohio to the day he killed him on October 15th, he slept in his blind 10 times.
I mean, kudos to him. If you're going to do that, good on you. Like, that's kind of cool to me.
Yeah. So the guy, you know, and once again, I'm happy that he killed him because he does a lot of land management. And I kind of got lucky and didn't realize that he was doing what he was doing. And I got a piece that butts up next to him. And I was just reaping from, you know, his work. So, you know, in reality, I kind of looked at it and was like, I want to kill this deer, obviously. I'm going to hunt it. I put all my eggs in one basket for that 208. But if there's anybody else that kills this deer, I want it to be the landowner that owned most of the property that he was on.
Sure.
Because he put in the work. And he ended up killing it. And this is back-to-back 200s for him. He killed one the year before. So, yeah, I'm not gonna tell.
You're in the right area, dude.
Where that property is because
wow,
so, man. But I ended up killing a real nice deer this year. He goes 157 as an 8-point. So I killed this deer this year. So for anybody watching online,
150-inch 8-pointer is a stud.
Yeah, he's beautiful.
He went 157, so I'm real happy with him. So, nice. But once again, that's the story of the mass buck, and I hope I told it well because I probably rambled for most of the time.
No, man, you did good, man.
I know we both greatly appreciate you coming on and doing this, and like I said, you know, we are getting up here on some time. I want to be conscious of your time too, but dude, thank you very much, Matt, for doing this. And like I said, greatly appreciated.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. David, you got anything to add in closing?
No, we just appreciate you coming on, man. It was a great story. And every time we tell these stories, I almost am so excited for the listeners to see the pictures, and you actually have some video of it. So I'm always excited for them to, you know, listen to it, then also get to, you know, paint a picture with it also.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Very cool, Matt.
I'm gonna throw a random plug before I leave.
I was going to ask you to do that. Whatever your YouTube channel is and everything you do, throw that in there, man.
Yeah. Thank you. If anybody's interested in seeing the content, it is Born Again Bow Hunting. We have YouTube channel, Instagram, working on a TikTok right now. We're not really big on Facebook. And then we just started a podcast a couple months ago. So we're like 20 episodes in on a podcast. So definitely, if that's something you're interested in checking out and listen to me ramble, I'd greatly appreciate it. So Born Again Bow Hunting.
Cool, man.
Hell yeah, dude. Thank you very much, Matt. And it was great talking to you. And thanks again.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, man.